Let's begin with a word of prayer together. Gracious one, may the words of my mouth, the meditations of all our hearts, be pleasing and strengthening to you, our Redeemer and our Rock. Amen. My journey with St. Andrew Christian Church was 4.5 years ago on May the 18th, and my journey inward was all virtual. I started in a virtual space, which was interesting. And other than the 18th and 19th, making some calls, doing some emails, I was living at Tall Oaks for the first 2 months before my family joined me up here in Kansas City. My first official ministry event, surprise, surprise, was on Zoom. It was with the Dialogue Institute, our friends from the Turkish Muslim community, and they were having a breaking of fast, and they'd done it in person. They decided to do one in Zoom. And the leader of that group is Eyüp. And if anybody knows Eyüp, he is just a fun, spirited, peace-oozing kind of person, and just a great individual. And he heard I had kind of did an RSVP to be present at the event, and Eyüp evidently was excited I was going to be on the Zoom call. The new person on staff going to join in on this event. They did a breaking of fast during their time of Ramadan and had a chance to interact and be with people. And when I got on the screen, Eyüp started out saying, I want to welcome Reverend Chris Wilson. We have a gift for him. And this is all virtual, remind you. And he held up in the screen this chocolate cake. This chocolate cake is for you, except I'm going to eat it for you because I can't give it to you. And ever since then, Eyüp and I have had this little game of whenever we're in the same place, we'll exchange chocolate cupcakes with one another, just kind of reminding us of that very first gathering. But the Dialogue Institute, like other faith traditions, we recognize that we have partnerships and connections with other religions, how important that is for our own sense of identity. And there's some parts of Christianity, why would we want to expand and have all these relationships with other faith traditions? I have found through the years that my connections with other faiths has made my faith stronger. But I've also had a greater appreciation for faiths that are different from mine, and I find there's way more in common with one another than is different. As an example, last Sunday, we had a family from the Dialogue Institute worshiping with us and left in my office a little container of baklava, which I thought was really just a sweet gesture on their part. And so having those kind of relationships of multi-faiths are really kind of an important part of our own faith tradition. I think about all the religions and sacred sites that I've had an opportunity to connect with through the years. And I think of all the places around the world that people say, this is a holy place. And in Christianity, we have places domestically, we have places internationally that we would call sacred sites for Christianity. And every world religion has sacred sites all around the world that are sacred to them. Now, in my travels, and I've been very blessed and fortunate to travel a little bit domestically, internationally, is I'm one that likes to go visit sacred sites, whether they're Christian or not. I love to see what other sites have to offer in terms of what it was about that site that was meaningful to them. What was happening at that event that made it sacred? Or even Christian sites, visiting some of those places. One of the places I had a chance to visit that many of you will know as soon as I say, it's in England. It's kind of unknown really kind of maybe what religious tradition it uniquely was. It was Stonehenge. If you've ever been to Stonehenge, these unique stones that are out there have this weird formation. They say it has something to do with the cycle of light and the cycle of the year, that maybe a certain ceremony happened at that site. When I initially went, you could go and you could actually go up and walk and actually touch the stones. But over the years, through vandalism and bad acts by human beings, they've created this little fence around it. You can only get within 50 feet of the site anymore. And it's how many sacred sites have been through the years. When you travel to them, less access to them. But it's interesting to be at a place where someone says something significant happened here. Something holy happened here that marked time for a group of people. That's an interesting thing to think, that our whole world is populated with sites that are unique and sacred to us in some way. When I think about the story today of Matthew and the wise men making a journey to see the gift of this birth into the world, thinking, what in the world are these wise individuals doing, traveling far distance to see some child that's not even a part of their tradition, probably? Why even make that journey? And I think deep within it is some kind of quest for something more in their life than what they currently have. A quest for something eternal, something powerful beyond ourselves, that we tap into something when there's something sacred or unique or powerful happening in the world. Now, at the time of Jesus' birth, one of the things that was longed for more than anything out of the Jewish community was the arrival of a Messiah. And there were certain things that went with the arrival of the Messiah. At least there was a belief about certain things that happened when a Messiah was to arrive. Certain things were going to come to fruition. Now, one of the things that was going to happen when the Messiah arrived, one of the things the Messiah would bring was unity. And that unity was a unity across people, faith, and culture. It wasn't just unique to the Jewish tradition. The Messiah had a way of building bridges across traditions to create unity and connection with the people around the world. And so there is this almost a global component of messiahship when that Messiah would show up. So unity was a big part of that. The second piece of a Messiah to come was to bring about peace. That there would be a time where there'd be no more war. That somehow Messiah would find healthy, unique ways for people to dialogue, engage, even people that think differently, instead of being at war and killing one another and being divisive and going to your corners and fighting for what you think is right, rather than finding a way to build bridges and connections and relationship, recognizing we have far more in common that is different than one another. The Messiah would bring that peace to the world, bring a sense of calm to humanity, because left to our own devices, we seem to segregate and separate and be divisive with one another. But a Messiah would bring about an altering way of how we function as society and humanity with one another. The Messiah, the third thing the Messiah would bring, if that Messiah were to arrive, would be a greater, keener awareness of God's presence in their life. Maybe at the time, maybe Jewish people felt at the time that their religion was too regimented and ritualized. It's much like sometimes in our own Christian experience of worship. We open up the bulletin, and it's time when whoever is the worship leader says it's time to recite the Lord's Prayer. We know it so well, we often don't think about the words, and so we just say the words and maybe not deeply think about those words. The Messiah was to bring about a keen, new awareness of God's work in your life and the work of the community in such a way that wasn't being experienced before. That God's interactive components with humanity and a particular faith tradition would heighten and strengthen what it means to live with vigor the very faith that's important to you. The fourth thing that a Messiah was to bring was called the restoration of the Jewish temple in Jerusalem. Now, if you were to go back 2,000 years ago and enter what would have been the temple experience, may not have been what was maybe thought of originally. You had, when you entered in, if you wanted to take a sacrifice of some animal, there was a protocol for animal sacrifice. If you brought your own animal, it wasn't good enough. You had to have one that was prepared particularly for animal sacrifice at the temple. So they had available shops to sell these animals, which is just great. And it cost money to be able to worship God because you wanted to bring that sacrifice to the temple. And on top of that, the temple had all these segregated rooms. There was a place for just the priests or just the male leaders. There was a court for the Gentiles. There was a court for the women. It was all segregated. When you worship, you weren't all together. You were all separated out in different groups. Part of the restoration of the temple, I think, was to realign what it is when we come as people to this space. How with equity do we worship the very God we believe in? These are the four key principles of messiahship: unity, peace, greater awareness of God's presence, and a reinvigorated sense of what it meant to worship and celebrate God's presence in your life communally and together. When you add those kind of things in, knowing that it's partly for the community that was the Jewish community, but there's evidences of that stretch beyond the Jewish community. Now, if I knew something like that was happening in the world, it was going to be some life-changing thing, that's the thing I would want to go check out. I'd want to go travel and be a part of that in some way. And we get in this passage in Matthew, which is so different from Luke's passage. The two books in the Bible we have as narrative stories. You have Matthew's and Luke's version, two very different versions of the telling of the birth of Jesus. In Matthew's version, it all comes from the Joseph perspective and through dreams. And Joseph and Mary know where to go because of dreams. They know when to flee because of dreams. All those things happen through dreams. We have no shepherds. We have no Mary and Elizabeth. We have none of those stories. They're all in Luke. But what we do have in Matthew are the visitation of the Magi, which is really fascinating to me because of all four Gospels, Matthew is the most Jewish of the four Gospels. And yet it's the one Gospel that includes visitors that are non-Jewish in the narratives. By its very nature, Matthew's Gospel, which is trying to solidify the Jewish kind of emerging Christian movement, but at the same time expanding space for others that were not part of that tradition at all. To include these Magi in the story was saying this gift to the world is not an exclusive gift. It's an expansive gift to change the course of history. When these Magi eventually show up, what are they looking for? When we make our journey to St. Andrew Christian Church on a Sunday morning, we make our way up the sidewalk and into the building and eventually into the sanctuary. Yes, we want to see welcome faces, people we've known. Or maybe we can encounter new faces we've not seen before. And we greet them and welcome them with a sign of peace or a sign of hospitality. And in the end, even though we are partly here for relationships and connections and a sense of welcome and affirmation of people, what we're really after is something deeper than that. We're after for a deep sense of meaning and purpose for my life. And I recognize that I can't figure that out by myself. I need a presence bigger than me to help me figure that out. How easy it would be to name all the things I need in my life and be self-sufficient. We recognize in our journey of faith that we are not fully self-sufficient people. We can't figure it out all by myself. My white male world, I want to fix it, and I can't fix it. My faith is bigger than something that can be fixed. It's something that's bigger and grander that helps me understand my place in the larger context of the world. When I have that kind of seeking in my life for greater depth and greater meaning and greater purpose for my life that's beyond me, that's the kind of expanding room that we're looking for in a place like this and beyond a place like this. Because it's not fully resting in this place. We are simply a piece of the larger puzzle of mystery and wonder and awe that we're all looking for one way or another. Yes, we want comfort. Yes, we want some kind of definition. We want some kind of stability in our life. We want all those kind of things. But if we really want the true essence of what our life to be, we want that sense of something bigger that we're a part of, something grander that we're a part of. And when those wise individuals make their journey and they see some light in the sky that guides them eventually to Bethlehem, they are traveling to a sacred site. Maybe this is a place where I can find that sense of wonder and mystery again. Find the very thing that will expand who I am and who God calls me to be. So are you looking for a Messiah this Christmas season? I hope so. I hope you're looking for unity and peace, a deeper awareness of God, a more fulfilling kind of worship experience. I hope you're looking for all those things. And my guess is others are looking for similar things in their life if we're just open to it enough to help them experience that too in their own unique ways. You never know. You might wake up someday and there'll be a chocolate cake on your front door. May it be so. Amen.